Opening week PD 1 hour session. We are live streaming this morning from WHC TV, also known as WHC Interactive. I am Rosina Haskins, Director of Equity Advancement for the West Hartford Public Schools, former title Director of Diversity Advancement. You know, over the last 6 months, we have been deeply reflecting on our organization, who we are as an organization, and who we serve. And present times have signaled a need for changes within our organization and our focus. So by now, I hope that you've had an opportunity to view Superintendent Moore's welcome back greeting to all of us. It was recorded. He is here in the studio with us to extend a greeting to all of you this morning, live and in person. Welcome, Superintendent Moore.
Thanks, Rosina. Welcome, everybody, and it's good to have you back and getting things underway. We're all excited to finally be able to welcome kids back on Tuesday. One of the things that I run into when I speak to other superintendents and we talk about the programs that we're running here and that Rosina has overseen, one thing that sometimes gets said that I actually resent is when people say, well, you're so fortunate you can do that. And it's not good fortune, it's choices. And we choose what we prioritize. We choose what's important to us. So this isn't lucky that we have the people we have. It's a choice. Now, we are fortunate, however, of the quality of the people that we have. And that quality, there's nobody I've met in my career that can crystallize my hopes and dreams the way Rosina does and can make me a better thinker. And Scott Ratchford, Rosina's going to talk about, I'm so excited to have him back doing this work. I've known Scott for probably 20 years in my career now, and he is a true leader. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you get a lot out of this, and that the conversations back in your building are deep and rich, and our minds and our hearts can work together here. So thanks, Rosina.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. You know, thank you for being a leader that sees possibilities when at times it's easier to see obstacles. We thank you for stopping by. We know that you have a very busy day and you're probably really eager to get out into our schools. So thank you again for joining us. Before I go any farther, I do want to give an important health and safety reminder and a disclaimer. Jen, if we can have our screen. So we're here in this beautiful, spacious studio, WHC TV. I just want to remind everyone that health and safety is our #1 priority. It is very important to us that we model our health and safety protocols for physical distancing and wearing face masks. And so one of the constraints of these necessary protocols are that we're unable to be with you this morning, and Google Meet does not allow for more than 250 participants. But our focus is so important, and we never want to compromise the health and safety of our community. And so as a radio, television, and film production undergraduate major, I love the beauty and creativity of how camera angles and the camera lens and staging can create optical illusions. So I assure you that we are following the same health and safety protocols that we expect of our colleagues. It sometimes feels tricky or awkward talking to someone or pretending to be talking to someone who's not even in the building anymore. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. So I am really thrilled to have a colleague joining me this morning. Dr. Scott Ratchford is joining me in this work, joining me this morning, and joining me in the Office of Equity Advancement to continue this work. Now, he is no stranger to the West Hartford Public Schools, having served many roles as a school psychologist, an administrator in West Hartford and across the state. He is a front runner in our equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and also a leader in family and school partnerships. welcome this morning, Dr. Ratchford.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything that you would like to share with our colleagues? Maybe share what your hopes are for this year?
So if I were to share my hopes, they would be for why I'm in education, which is I would hope that we get the thrill of seeing students walk through our doors and that everyone is healthy, first of all, and we see normalcy, honestly. That we see our students and our teachers doing what they need to be doing, which is growing and learning together. So I hope everyone stays safe, but I also hope that we have a year in which we're really focused on what is positive.
Okay, so I'd like to frame our time, our hour with you this morning and just lay out what to expect. Scott and I are going to share our airtime. We're going to unpack our goals, our purpose, and our focus for this year, not just this year, but as a long-term commitment. Following this session, you'll have a 10-minute break, and then you'll go into your scheduled breakout groups led by really skillful facilitators, our own colleagues here. And so we do have some housekeeping items. We have prepared a PowerPoint presentation that we have sent in a link just this morning and previously. And so that PowerPoint presentation is yours. It's accessible for you in case you want to linger a little longer, although we will project all of the slides here on the screen this morning. And then we'll have a couple of special guests to come in and close us out before we go into our break. Now, we are going to ask you this morning to kind of maybe imagine, reflect, and ponder as our way of interacting with you. We do realize that we may not cover everything and we may not have remembered everything. So we have prepared a parking lot for you, a Google form, for your questions or comments if they arise during or after the opening session. Many of those questions will probably be answered during your breakout session, but certainly feel free to contribute. So Scott and I were reminiscing this morning about this time last year when we convened as a large WHPS family in the beautiful auditorium of Conard High School. And we greeted each other with handshakes, fist bumps, hugs, and we shared stories about our summer adventures. Now we realize that this platform doesn't allow for that kind of engagement and interaction, and it certainly doesn't compare to how Jen Stanish and the band brought the house down at Conard, but we're going to do our very best. And again, at times we're going to ask you to ponder, reflect, and imagine. So if you will, I'd like for you to think of your favorite relaxation destination or even just your favorite peaceful space, a place where you can be at peace. Okay. Have you thought of your space?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I would like for you to join me. Let's take a cleansing breath. Inhale your peaceful space. And now, gradually, exhale that into the universe. Thank you. Now imagine all of us together in your peaceful space, joined in a circle. And I'm going to start with a greeting again. Good morning, Kasarian Ingira. Kasarian Ingira. That means, and how are the children? It is the traditional greeting of the African Maasai community. Whereas we say, good morning, how are you? They say, good morning, and how are the children? Kasarian Ingira. See, they concern themselves with the future generation because they truly believe that nurturing and the well-being of the children is their path to prosperity. And so it made me think, what if we greeted each other with Kasarian and Gera and how are the children? Now their response is, all of the children are well. And they greet each other whether they have children or not. And all of the children are well doesn't mean that they don't have productive struggle. It simply means that they are in the caring and compassionate hands of a community. And so I think, wow, what if that was our guiding principle here in the West Hartford Public Schools? And how are the children? All of the children are well, because that's our central focus. Now I know that that's not all there is to it. The adults have to be well too. You have any thoughts about that, Scott?
So it's a morning for maybe some new phrases. This was a new one to me as well. There's another Maasai phrase that we wanted you to think about, which is the phrase supai, and that's how are you? So we also know that not only is the beginning of this year different in that you aren't gathering in that huge our commencement and seeing all of the familiar faces and the new faces. We know that there is a new world that you're coming from, and that there are feelings that come along with that, some trepidation, and some folks that are coming from a world that is very, in many ways, in upheaval right now. So we're asking you to think about how are you, meaning how are you doing personally, and also checking in on those around you. So we want to wish you all a good start for your year and ask you supai as well, and to check in on each other and check in on yourselves from time to time.
So I wonder if we think about that concept of checking in on the children and checking in on each other, especially during this time, what would that mean or look like for our community, our one community in this school year, our 1 year? So I'd like for you, my colleagues, to think about what would we see? What would be some indicators that the children are well? And you can go ahead if you have the PowerPoint and click on the link and add your thoughts there. Scott, what about you? What do you think we would see? What would be some indicators that all of the children are well?
In all of my years in education, there's nothing that tells me that kids are doing well more than just looking in at smiling faces and kids laughing. So I really hope that we see that. I know the mask is going to make that a little bit different, but the smile that reaches the eyes. So smiling and happy children, I guess, would be what I would say. So Rosina, I'll ask you the same question. If we are going to look out for one another, what would I see? What would be some indicators that we, the adults, are well?
I think the reciprocal. The children would be smiling too. And I think, again, we would see it in their eyes. I think we would also see it, the adults, we would see it in their body language. We would see it in their engagement and interaction. We would probably see it, we would probably hear a song in their voices, right, music teachers? We'd hear that song, but we would see cheerful engagement. That's what I imagine.
I love it. So, again, to sort of start the year off right and to start today's meeting off properly, we have this phrase here, appreciate you, meaning we appreciate you, first of all. And we know the courage it takes and the commitment it takes to children for you to step into the building and to do this work. But we also want you to remember it for yourself, appreciate you, appreciate yourself. Self-care is really important. I think we all learned throughout last spring just how important that is when things don't really follow a normal rhythm. So we're giving you some reminders of what that includes. Acknowledge your own emotions. It's important to start with that. Where am I right now? How am I feeling? As we teach our children about self-care and about self-regulation, we have to start with ourselves. Give yourselves permission to be human, and don't do it with judgment. It's easy when things aren't as they have been throughout our careers to fall back into a place where we say, I'm not sure I know I'm being effective. I'm not sure I know what I'm doing right now, but you're committed to this work. You're going to continue to work at it, and you're here for our children. And so come at it without judgment. Practice all the other pieces of self-care as well. Care for your body. Make sure you're getting that body moving each day. Take advantage of the support that's around you in the form of professional support as well as personal support. Unplug. There's so much in the news right now, so much on screens right now that is alarming. We need to give ourselves time to just be outside of that world and just be with those that we care about and do something else. Socialize safely. Treat yourself once in a while. Give yourself permission to do something that's just about joy and about feeling good. And finally, remember to laugh. To Rosina's point, we would love to have laughter. Anybody who knows me knows that I love a good laugh. I think we all need to remember to laugh. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for those reminders. I almost want to make a refrigerator magnet.
Yeah, maybe we should.
So let's talk about what we've been experiencing over the last 6 months.
So to the point of this being a different world, our students are coming in our doors too. Not just we, but our students are coming in our doors with, they're not blank slates. They're coming in from a world that is in a different place right now for all sorts of reasons, including all the social unrest that's going on around systemic racism. We have an activated group of young people and parents. We'd like to remind you just to think about and to be attuned to where they are right now. The scene that we have here is actually just from June of this past year on our front steps right outside of these doors. And those are our students, those are our community members, our family members. They are letting us know where they are right now. And it's important to make sure that we make space for that in our work.
So, Scott, that was in our own backyard.
It was right here.
Just this past June. And, this reaction, it's sweeping the nation. This is Naomi Osaka. She is a professional tennis player, and she has taken a firm stand against racial injustice. And so has NBA player Jaylen Brown. We have seen an awakening to a legacy of injustice. And we're seeing a groundswell of demand for, dismantling systemic racism and, just creating more just ways of being and doing. And so this has implications for our educators, for all of us, for our district, to really be attuned and prepared to guide our students through the realities of systemic racism. It is a heavy responsibility to bear. It is heavy on the heart, on the soul, and the mind. So let's talk about where we might be entering this work from.
Right. So we are here also to help guide, and in one of our attempts to help people, we'd like you to think about where you're starting. It's okay to be in different places. It's okay to have a level of discomfort, but we all start responding to the systemic racism and what we see around us in different ways. And so looking at the framework that was provided here, this is one that was created in the model of Courageous Conversations by Singleton and others. It is important to know where you are. Some of us approach systemic racism and the work of social justice in their head, intellectually. And others, it's more of a belief system. It's more how it is that my beliefs are activated. Or it's an emotional response. I just feel this so deeply. Or it may be that I need to take action, and that's where I am right now, that I need to be involved with a protest, or I want something to do. Those are all ways in which we might respond, and we may begin. It's okay to begin where you are. And so we're going to hopefully be part of a district-wide, a community-wide, and hopefully a national effort to be able to dismantle systemic racism. Start where you start.
Thank you for that, Scott. So community, you mentioned, that is the only way, right? To be collective and in community and to stand together. And so that is going to be our way. We want everyone to situate themselves and see themselves in this work individually, but around a collective vision. And so we will do that through social emotional learning and social justice education. So that's our path, that's our how. And what's our goal? anti-racist organization, ways of being and doing, to be more inclusive, socially just, and also to be kind, to build relationships, to build community.
So as with any work that is challenging, where people's emotions are heightened, and where it is that we have to find a way to do the work, we want to make sure that we establish norms for that work. And so, again, borrowing some of the ideas from Courageous Conversations, who have done this work for years, one of the most important pieces is that you stay engaged. Regardless of what you feel, regardless of how hard, we ask that we all stay engaged, and even if you don't agree with what's being said, that you recognize the risk and the importance of this type of work. You participate in a manner that's for you, that you're listening and using respectful, listening for one another, and respectful use of technology. Being okay with discomfort is a second norm that we'd like to establish. There will be a level of discomfort. Growth comes from discomfort, and if we don't find that place, we really probably aren't stretching ourselves. So we need to make sure that we lean into that. Respect each other's learning journey. We need to know that not everyone is in the same place. Not everyone is at the same point in the path toward understanding systemic racism and what to do about it. That's okay. Acknowledge that for yourself, acknowledge that for those that are working with you, and ensure that you give them the respect to find their own pace. And finally, accept non-closure. Non-closure is really a part of any social justice work, and particularly in this case, we aren't ever done. This is work that is about equity, and equity is something we strive for. It's an aspiration, it's not an endpoint.
Those are norms that we want to always remind ourselves and our students of, and I think we're going to try to get some visuals into our classrooms for our students as regular reminders. We're all humans, and we're just trying to grow. So I want to speak for just a moment about culturally responsive teaching, or CRT. It is a research-based approach to making meaningful connections between what students learn in the classroom and what they learn in their cultures and their language, and in their life experiences. And so this wheel represents 8 key instructional CRT, culturally responsive practices that support all students and build habits of mind that lead to success. Now, this is just essentially good teaching, right? But there is another element to education and teaching and instruction. It's important that students see themselves in the context of teaching and learning, their narratives, their histories. It's the mirrors and sliding glass doors and windows, but there are other elements to it. You want to talk a little about social emotional learning?
Sure. So I was a classroom teacher before I was a psychologist, before I was an administrator. And I come from a family of educators. My mother, who taught 50 years, taught me a really important lesson, which is you're never teaching English. I used to teach English. You're teaching children. So in that vein, we are really teaching better people to be better human beings. We have a framework for what it is that we're hoping to help children to do, which is to develop socially, develop emotionally, develop their sense of self-awareness, develop their self-management skills, their social awareness and relationship skills, and develop responsible decision-making. Some of that is taught directly. Some of that comes from them watching us and how we interact and how we run our classrooms and our schools. And remembering in that we have students who are coming to us who have a variety of different experiences and a variety of different images in their heads and in their hearts, that their backpacks are filled with more than books. And so we need to make sure that we do think about who they are as human beings and what they're experiencing right now, and help them to navigate a very complicated time. Complicated for us as adults. Imagine the complication of those middle schoolers who are in front of us and what they need from us. So there are things that we can do, the how. So Rosina spoke about how. One of the most important things we can do, because I think we oftentimes, when it's new, we think about, there's not much that I already know. There's not much I know about how to do this, but you do. There's a lot that you already know. First and foremost, keeping an orderly and predictable classroom helps to anchor students. students who've experienced trauma or students who are experiencing turmoil, they look to the environment around them. Our classrooms, when they're orderly and predictable, are islands of safety. They're places where the world makes sense to them. The rules and the expectations are clear. And two, they look at us. Calm and fair and reasonable educators help young people to ground themselves. They teach self-regulation by their actions and by their deeds.
So, listening to you talk about orderly predictability, it makes me think of a saying of a former colleague of ours, former Human Resources Director Tim Dunn, great guy. He used to say, nobody likes to be struck by lightning on a sunny day, but unexpected things happen. And so we have this opportunity through this framework that you've discussed, and one that I'd like to introduce, to really model and teach students a set of skills so that they can be self-aware, they can self-regulate, and they can be agents of change. And so the set of standards, social-emotional learning, that we subscribe to is developed by CASEL. It's the Collaborative for Academic Social-Emotional Learning. And so in that framework, we want to help students to develop a positive self-concept, identify and understand and regulate their emotions when those expected things happen, or there's not so much order in their lives or experiences, and develop an understanding of our societal and community rules and situate themselves as having responsibility within a community around a collective vision, and ultimately build positive interpersonal relationships. It's what it's really about. It's about the relationships. And so we use this bridge as a metaphor to illustrate the alignment between social-emotional learning and social justice education. And so social justice standards developed by Teaching Tolerance allows us and guides us to help us to teach and model students, to help us to be able to create more socially just, equitable, and inclusive, kind communities. And so if I can make the parallel, identity, right, is about who am I, right? and being assured of who you are and feeling like you can be yourself. And then diversity, it's understanding, recognizing the world around you and differences, right? With differences bring strengths, but with differences sometimes it brings challenges. So identity, that's the mirror. Diversity, that's the window. Justice and action, that's the sliding glass door. Justice is having a moral responsibility, feeling like you're morally compelled to not look away from things that are not right. Discrimination, oppression, and injustice. And then action, that's that activism. Part of your community responsibility to be an agent of change. So that's the bridge between social-emotional learning and social justice education. And we're so fortunate to have these standards by experts in the field to help us to teach our students and guide them through this pathway, this journey. And so ultimately, this is our way, collective, social-emotional learning and social justice education. That's going to be our focus for this year and our long-term commitment. So we remain unwavered and connected to our cultural competence framework. That has not changed. And I just want to unpack that a little bit and refresh a little bit. Our cultural competence framework, it's essentially that cultural consciousness, it's being aware, it's the identity, being aware of self, right? Recognizing we all have biases. We all have prejudices, right? And that sounds hard, sounds like a hard word, right? But it means prejudging. And sometimes it's because we are so hardwired that we bring certain biases into our experiences and our interactions with other people. But it is not in our DNA. We can unlearn some of these biases and stereotypes that are harmful. And so it's what we do with it. It is contextualizing and operationalizing it to be culturally responsive in our teaching and in our practice and in our interactions with students. And going back to those key instructional practices. And then subsequently, and this isn't linear in any way, you're always evolving. Being a cultural advocate, an agent for change, we have this wonderful opportunity to teach humanity. Now, that framework is what drives us in this equity, diversity, and inclusion work, but it is the standards for professional learning relevant to cultural competence that guides us. And so the Connecticut State Department offers the cultural competence standard for professional learning. And so this is what we use to inform and help us to grow and develop in this work. And so our goals really are to build capacity among all of us. We keep talking about community and collective vision, but we can't get there unless we start to build the tools and the sets of skills that we need. And we have such a wonderful opportunity this year, even in the face of challenge, to reimagine education, to reshape our schools so that they are schools for everyone. And how do we know that our schools are more responsive and equitable and inclusive and socially just? We'll see it in the opportunities that we provide for students and their engagement and their relationships and their outcomes. We will see that all of our students are well. So we also have models and methods and tools that we want to support our educators. So Scott talked about, embracing discomfort, being okay, allowing yourself to experience discomfort. And so as we're asking you, our educators, to experience discomfort along with our students, we want to assure you that we are going to work really, really hard to provide you with the tools and resources that you need to develop skills and maybe even confidence in this work.
And likewise, Rosina, the state and we have goals for social and emotional learning. This is a framework that we're borrowing from, and all this work is aspirational. It's where we'd like to get to. So with social and emotional learning, it's not just surface level. The development of all learners contributes to their academic and career success. And I would add that the third C, we talk about the Common Core of career and college ready. We're talking also citizens. We're developing young citizens, and those that will be our community members, those will be our neighbors. We'd like them all to have a good ability to manage their emotions and manage themselves socially. So together, we can help students understand and respect themselves, and others require effective interpersonal skills, understand safety and resilience skills, and develop into those contributing members of society. It is creating community. So with that notion of community, we would like to think about our classrooms and our learning spaces as a community that we build each day. And how we manage that community is important. That we build a kind, inclusive, and safe classroom community, and we're committed to those ideas.
So, Scott, I really like the heart in hand image.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about something that my grandmother used to say, right? She used to say, if you can't be kind, then be careful, right? And kindness is such an easy thing. It's free.
Right.
And so I feel like we have been talking kind of theoretically. Mm-hmm. Can you share with our colleagues some tips, some tools?
Sure. I think that, again, it's easy to have this sort of bigger ideas, but it's challenging sometimes to think about what is it that we can do. I know that as a classroom person and as folks who are working on the ground, you're probably hungry for how. And so we will be providing, as the year goes along, more and more of these tips and ideas from one another, borrowing from our colleagues. But just to start, One of the things that's important is to think about how we create in that community, in that space, a safe space, a secure space. And many of these things, again, we already know how to do, what to do. Providing classroom routines and expectations, that's a sense of safety for young people. They know what to expect. They know what's predictable. Creating norms and expectations around kindness and respect, that's important. Especially now, we have some different norms we're having to establish. Things like wearing masks, for example, that is a form of expressing kindness to others. We are protecting one another and looking out for one another.
So I want to talk about that a little
Sure.
bit, because that's not something we've already done. We have been
No,
doing. We don't
this
have
is
that.
new. You're right.
So talk to me about this face mask culture.
Right. So if we're thinking about norms, first of all, I love the mask. Our little ones are going to be wearing some of those. I think we need to look at this as a part of just what it means to be a member of this community. I think we need to be careful about shaming young people or coming at them in a sense of what would be punitive, as opposed to building this as a norm for all of us. We're all helping to keep this as a safe and healthy environment. So I think that tone is really important. Applauding effort isn't something that is new to us. We really do applaud effort, the work of Carol Dweck, we know that, but I think maybe now more than ever, we have some young people who really may not necessarily know, am I doing okay? It's about how they approach the work and applauding that effort that would be important. Second area that we'd like to make sure we look at is being valued as an inclusive member of a community. To Rosina's point, we really look in that mirror, but we create safe spaces for one another and for other children when we value and we honor difference. We leave room for it. And so it's all about relationships at the core. Equity work is about building those respectful relationships that are founded in trust. So intentionally give yourself room in the classroom to build relationships, students to students, you to your students, and our families are important. Families are going to be sending their students to us maybe more now than ever with some fear about what's happening. Making sure you stay in touch with those families and that we build this wraparound for all kids is really important. Actively inviting a range of perspectives, actively including that as a part of our work is also a way in which to dismantle racist ideas and to build this notion that all ideas have space as long as we're respectful in how we look at them. And including and validating and honoring those diverse ideas with diverse content, points of view, and experiences is something that we can all do. Modeling self-regulation and anti-racism is probably one of the most important things that we can do. Using think aloud strategies is a way to do that. When I read this story in the news, this is what I was thinking. This is what first hit me. I was first responding emotionally as you, the teacher, or you, the adult in the room. It's okay to unpack those emotions with your students. It models for them that this is uncomfortable, but yet you worked your way through it. I got to the place where I had to move beyond my anger and I had to think about what to do. That's an important way in which to model for young people that emotions aren't an endpoint, they're only an activation. Exemplifying openness to informed debate. We certainly have a difficult time with that in our country right now. So teaching that and modeling that is important, and being willing to be vulnerable. I think, again, when we've dealt with trauma and tragedy in the past, our research tells us and our experience tells us, kids sometimes it's okay for us to expose some of our emotions and to be vulnerable in front of them, to see us as human beings. And lastly, directly teach some of this work. Empathy and perspective taking sometimes is challenging for young people, and we need to give them opportunities to go and practice it through literature, through exploration of other ideas and other experiences that are outside of their own. We know at this age, middle schoolers tend to be very egocentric and focused on their own world through their own lens. We need to help them to get outside of that. And then active listening certainly is a skill that can be taught, that we need to teach kids to reframe the ideas from others and to go and replay what was heard. And lastly, managing disagreement respectfully is certainly a skill and it's a way to approach conflict that is not something that is natural for some kids or some adults. We need to actively teach how that's done in a way that is going to leave them with some tools.
So thank you for sharing some very explicit examples for us to use. And one thing that I want to make very clear is that, we're not experts We're in this, we're not talking at you. You are our colleagues, and we are in this work together. And so we invite you to join us in growing and building, to really learning through this process. So over the summer, we released our commitment to equity and anti-racism statement to our families and to our community. And it is essentially our commitment to all children. It does highlight our shortcomings, because acknowledgement is really important. Acknowledgement is important in healing. And so we're very transparent about that. It also highlights what we have done, things that we have done well. And it isn't intended to boast about our points of pride at this time. This is probably not a time that we want to celebrate things that we have been doing with respect to equity, inclusion, and diversity, but we do want to honor the work of all of our colleagues. And also, we want to give context to anybody who may be new to the district, learning about the district, or just unfamiliar with the work that we have been doing. So we hope that you've had an opportunity now to take a look and really understand this commitment that we're all in together. It's essentially, it's not just words on paper. It is our promise to all students. And when we, it's not that, it's all students, not some students. And it calls for us to really pay close attention to students who have been traditionally marginalized, underserved, and underrepresented. We have to find ways to elevate and amplify the voices and visibility of some of our students that we haven't seen or heard from. So, Scott, last week there was a video that was trending among our colleagues and heavily on social media, and it had a profound impact on me. I'd like for you to set this up for our colleagues while I get it queued up.
So the video that you're about to see, I think most probably have the context, but if you didn't pay attention to what was happening in the news, the NBA playoffs were starting, and many of the players, in response to the events of the Kenosha shootings, but also to what's happening in our country, felt it important to strike, to not have a playoff game, because it would send the wrong message. And so what you're about to see is one of the coaches who was keeping his professional hat on, or at least trying. In speaking about that strike, Doc Rivers is one of the coaches, and he hoped to speak just simply to the press about the strike.
Okay, fingers crossed that I can get this to work here.
Feeling this fear, right? Like, all you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. We're the ones that we're denied to live in certain communities. We've been hung, we've been shot, and all you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. It's just really sad. We got to do better. But we got to demand better. Like, it's funny. We protest and they send riot guards, right? They send people in riot outfits. They go to Michigan with guns and they're spitting on cops and nothing happens. The training has to change in the police force. The unions have to be taken down in the police force. My dad was a cop. I believe in good cops. We're not trying to defund the police and take all their money away. We're trying to get them to protect us, just like they protect everybody else. I didn't want to talk about it before the game because it's so hard. Like, just keep watching it. That video, if you watch that video, you don't need to be black to be outraged. You need to be American and outraged. And how dare the Republicans talk about fear? We're the ones that need to be scared. We're the ones having to talk to every black child. What white father has to give his son a talk about being careful if you get pulled over? It's just ridiculous. And it just keeps going. There's no charges. Breonna Taylor, no charges, nothing. All we're asking is you live up to the Constitution. That's all we're asking for everybody, for everyone. Thank you.
Wow. To hear the raw emotion of this African American man, it chokes me up every time. What was your reaction, Scott?
So I've probably seen this a dozen times, but I'll go back to the first time that I saw it. I didn't know where he was headed. And, you know, you talk about the compass. It was raw emotion for me, too. I think it, as a father, as a coach, as a human being, it just first hit me just the power of what he said. And then I found myself outraged, first upset, and then outraged. And I don't know if it has to do with my gender, my race, what it is that got me to the next place, which is more about moral indignation and wanting to do something about it. So I just sort of found myself taking a little ride with him. But the power of what he said and how he said it was really inescapable.
We keep loving this country, and this country doesn't love us back.
It's hard to hear.
And this is going to be a statement that lives through history. You know, it put into context for me, it made me think about Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it's a trademark for some people or it really is a philosophy. You know, for me, I don't have a Black Lives Matter sign in my yard because Black Lives Matter to me, obviously. But when I think about, you know, people who say, Rosina, you know, you're an educator, background in special education, all lives matter, right? You know, all lives matter, but all lives don't matter until Black lives matter, until we see that Black lives matter. And Black lives have to matter more. That's when all lives matter. So, you know, Doc Rivers, I just want to commend his vulnerability right before a game, a major game. Wow, it's heavy. So I want to give some context to some of the work that we have been doing. You know, this work didn't start when Colin Kaepernick took a knee. It didn't start when that officer took a knee to George Floyd's neck, his heart, his spirit, and his soul. And all of America, and maybe globally. But we're doing something about it now. Doing more. And, you know, I think that COVID really ripped the Band-Aid off of the sad, true realities, a legacy of injustice. And has it really exposed the true, ugly ways of our society that we haven't seen or truly looked at. And so over the summer, we said, you know, we did a lot of deep reflection again as I opened with looking at who we are as a district and who we serve. And we had a number of passionate change agents answer the call to really set a foundation for our work and our focus this year to deepen our cultural competence work through an anti-racist lens. And so if I had an hour, I wouldn't have enough time to name all of my colleagues who have answered this call to help to set us up to come in and write lessons that we will use to work with our students in morning meetings, our community settings, morning advisory. And also parents. We had parents come in during the summer. And what was wonderful about all of this work, because those relationships will matter, they matter, and they will continue to grow, but we saw this synergy and energy around the work with our colleagues and our families. And so we just look forward to using that to leverage us as we move forward. And we also had a number, and you'll see your colleagues today as facilitators in your breakout session, they were deeply engaged in this work. Some of them meeting each other for the first time, but really, really creating spaces and tools and opportunities for us to really dig a little deeper. And so we are working on developing a compendium of resources and tools for all of our educators, whether it's real time or in demand or any time. So these are just a few links that are active, they're live, they're referenced this morning with us, but there's more than just these book resources and links and videos. Do you want to say more about that, Scott?
So I think Rosina is alluding to the fact that we have resources around us, right? So we can't do this work alone. This is a community effort. This is a national effort. We have colleagues who've begun this work for us and with us, and we want to make sure that we reach out to them as well. Over the summer, there were 50 plus people doing a set of book reads on anti-racism. There are people who are in this deeply, and there are resources too. We know that many of you are busy creating lesson plans, trying to run as fast as you know how. And so we want to make sure that you get the support that you need and that we identify what those resources are for you and some of those folks that you can lean on, and so that you're not in the work alone, that we can help you to carry forward what it is that you need to do and help our young people to be able to get through this time.
One community, 1 year. And so I have a quote that I want to read. It is by the sister of Jacob Blake, Letitra Widman. And it reads, "So many people have reached out to me saying they're sorry that this has been happening to my family." Well, don't be sorry, because this has been happening to my family for a long time, longer than I can account for. It happened to Emmett Till. Emmett Till is my family. It happened to Philandro, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland. I don't want your pity, I want change. That spoke to me, because I have colleagues and friends who ask me, what do I do? Rosina, what are ways of being anti-racist? And it is educating yourself. It is taking action, noticing, not just noticing difference, but noticing difference in treatment and outcomes. And also, it's not about sympathy. It's an element of empathy. It's not pity. And so those are just some very practical ways that you can start, moving toward being anti-racist. And again, we're all in this together. Our BIPOC community, we situate ourselves in that too. When I say BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so perhaps you'll consider ways that you can be an ally, or maybe even a co-conspirator. And so at this time, before I close out, I'd like to introduce you to one of our colleagues you may know, who I consider a co-conspirator and a friend, Jocelyn Tamburello Noble. She is the World Language Department Supervisor, and she is quite a leader in our equity, diversity, and inclusion work. Welcome, Jocelyn. Jocelyn, would you share with us what this work means for you?
Absolutely. So welcome everybody. I am so excited to be here today as we continue the work on becoming anti-racist. So this work for me is personal. I've been working on equity for 18 years and 40 years of my life to really consider my personal path to becoming anti-racist. We are looking for co-conspirators. As a graduate of West Hartford Public Schools and as a mother of 2 children in West Hartford Public Schools, I'm committed to racial justice and being an advocate, an ally, and a co-conspirator to all of my colleagues who continue to do this work and advocate for all of our children. We want West Hartford Public Schools to be an inclusive place for all, linguistically, racially, ethnically, that we must do better, and we must learn the history that was never told to us. We must learn how to make everything accessible for all of our students. And we must first begin that with ourselves. So start by learning more, because when you know more, you do more, and when you know better, you do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. You bring to mind the words of the late John Lewis. He says, "Get into good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America." Thank you for your moral courage. And so to close us out, I'd like to bring Becca Lewis. She's a social studies department. She's a social studies teacher at King Philip Middle School, and she has been another front runner in this work. But before I do, I just want to ask you, Scott, if there are any final words that you would like to share with colleagues?
I'm going to end where I started, which is this is important work. I think any of us who come to education, I know I came in education, view it as social justice work. I would hope that you have a great year in making a difference in the lives of kids and families, and know that you do. And stay healthy and stay focused on what's important.
Thank you, Scott. Becca, please close us out and let us know what we can expect for this next 2 hours.
Great. Thank you so much, Rosina and Scott, for a wonderful opening to lay the groundwork for this work that will continue the next 2 hours, as well as throughout this school year. You have a break from now until 9:10, and then you're going to enter your breakout A session. And so Rosina sent out links this morning where you can find your breakout session A Google Meet, and then at 10 o'clock you'll enter your session B Google Meet. That is all in the same Google Sheet. And if you ever run into any issues, you can go to the information help desk meet, and I will be on there to guide you into the correct place.
Thank you so much, Becca. And I'd like to close by saying thank you to our colleagues. It is such an honor for me to work with all of you in leading this work. Best wishes for a safe, positive, and healthy school year. We'll see you after the break in 10 minutes in your breakout sessions.